Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers. Welcome back, Brewer fans, to another podcast edition of the Brew Crew Review. This is podcast number 38. I'm Vince Trovato. Joining me here on the set today is the one and only great man, Scott Bartell. Scott, how are you tonight?
I am doing pretty good. I've got the fever.
Well, that's
Brewer fever.
well, that's good. Catch the fever. And we are missing two of our fellow co-hosts. We're hoping that Craig Mueller can join us tonight. Craig had mentioned earlier that he was DJing a wedding somewhere in West Dallas. I don't know what that all entails, a West Dallas wedding. I'm sure it's amazing, but I think he said it's at Kegel's Inn or something. I can't remember exactly where it is. And Scott, you talked to our fellow co-host, Chad Collins. Is Chad joining us this evening?
I didn't want to alarm anyone or anything like that, but I actually did not talk to Chad this week. I don't know why. He just, I tried to get a hold of him, but I'm sure he's fine. I think he's just in a euphoric state right now. He just kept tweeting or texting MAGA to me over and over. So, I mean,
Wow.
I'm sure he's in good spirits. I just don't know where he is. Somewhere in the great middle America.
Has our intern Lisa talked to Chad? I mean, has anyone talked to Chad? I guess is my question. Do we know that he's okay?
I mean, like I said, I mean, he just texted MAGA over and over, so I know it was him. But
yeah.
And he was in a really good mood. So, I mean, there's no cause for concern, I guess. Maybe it was just some sort of scheduling conflict that he had, or maybe a miscommunication on my part.
I know his schedule gets really intense here his last few weeks of summer before school starts again. I think that is probably, in about 3 weeks. And I think until that point, Chad's schedule is definitely booked up previous to work. So we're hoping he joins us after he gets back on a work schedule. Maybe it's a little easier for him. But in any event, all right.
Yeah, between scouting, for us and preparing curriculum for America's youth.
Yeah.
The 40th greatest generation. Then I don't know. He's just, he spends all his time in that. He's just a very, very great man. Yeah,
I know he does that State Fair podcast, State Fairs Around the Country podcast as well. So that's an interesting one. All right. Well, in any event, let's get started here. Brewer fans, we've got a lot in store for you here today. This is the show that we go through our mailbag and answer a couple of your questions. We will do a Rapid 9 segment today where we try to throw out some Brewers trivia to confuse the other hosts on the set. And but before all that, Scott and his intern staff, Lisa and Melissa, have done a lot of research this week on a Brewers outfield prospect. It's which one are you researching here today, Scott?
You know what? Just for fun, we're gonna go with Troy Stokes today, just because this is a guy who. I have a feeling we're going to hear from him in, I guess, roughly about a year or two. But, I haven't heard much about him up until this point, and he's really starting to turn it on a little bit. So I thought it'd be worth it to give a little prospect profile of him.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's get started. What do you have for us today on Mr. Stokes? We'd love to hear it. And I know a lot of Brewer fans, like you just said, have probably not heard a lot about him. He's been climbing up prospect lists recently, but he hasn't necessarily been a guy that has gotten a lot of press or publicity here in the past season. So what do you have for us on him this season here, Scott?
All right, so a couple things about Troy Stokes. First of all, we'll go with the simple stuff. He's 22 now. We actually drafted him out of high school in the 2014 draft in the 4th round. He hails from Calvert Hall College High School. That's in Baltimore, Maryland. And, he's entering in his age 22 season right now, and he's hanging out in Double-A. He was actually the number 33 prospect, so he wasn't even in our top 30 going into this year, but he's really stood out this year and put together a great year in Double-A Biloxi. So in that time, he's actually been there in 111 games. He's had 479 plate appearances, and I guess what really stands out is, okay, picture this. All right, the guy's only $180. He's only 5'8", and he's got 17 homers in 406 official at-bats, and in 479 plate appearances, he has gotten 54 walks. So he's walking, what is that, like 10, 12% of the time, something like that. That's phenomenal. So very happy to see that. Unfortunately, his patience doesn't always work out the way he wants, because in those 479 plate appearances, he also has 135 Ks. But with somebody that is that patient, it's nice to know that he has 17 homers so far, and he also has 18 stolen bases, and he's only been caught twice all year. So he's sitting right around 800 OPS. So
that's great. And a guy at his age can still develop, I think, at the plate in a mental fashion too, where, a lot of these at bats and in strikeouts right now, a guy with his patience already, I think, can translate that to being a better two-strike hitter going forward. That's something that you can see improve over time. It's not set in stone that he's going to be a high strikeout guy. He may never get down to, a low strikeout percentage perhaps, but that being said, there's always ways to improve your game. I think it's on that level especially. So we'll be very interested to see how he develops next year. And I think, it'll be really interesting to see kind of where he goes, say a year from now. He might be on the bubble to get a call out. So it'll be really interesting if he can put up those numbers next year.
Yeah, I think he kind of projects right now to be like sort of that fourth or fifth outfielder when he does break through, but hopefully he can improve on that. And yeah, I guess the only reason why I really wanted to do a prospect profile on Troy was because, like I said, he hadn't really gotten any pub. I don't think he got the pub that he's deserved over the last year now. And, when you think about our outfield and the logjam that we've had, we have so many different outfielders now. But now with, Brett Phillips moving on, maybe this is a guy that can, eventually is going to fill that role. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Phillips, of course, for as most Brewer fans are well aware, was traded here at the deadline a few weeks ago to the Kansas City Royals for Mike Moustakas. So Phillips, of course, been out of that logjam. We still do have quite a few guys in the system that are outfielders and guys obviously at the major league level. We've got ex-big leaguers who are currently in AAA that we still don't know what's going to happen with guys like Cam Broxton and Domingo Santana. And then you've got other major prospects like Corey Ray, who's also hitting very well this year in Biloxi. So it'll be really interesting to see how the Brewers kind of sort out their outfield. Certainly you can see David Stearns going one of a couple of ways. And, one way is the simple way. And guys like Stokes and Ray continue to work their way through the system and end up being on the big league roster and helping out in the major leagues on some level in our outfield. Or number two, they're used as trade chips themselves. Or number three, they've got to bide their time a little bit more as the situations get sorted and guys like Broxton and Santana either come back up to the bigs and be big league contributors again or themselves get traded. So it'll be really interesting to see what David Stearns kind of has in mind for the Brewers outfield going forward. We know that guys like Christian Yelich and Lorenzo Cain are virtual locks to be, our starting outfielders for the next 4 seasons after this year, given their contract situations. And guys like Corey Ray get a lot more press, but it'll be really interesting to see what happens to a guy like Stokes.
Yeah, for sure. It's just so interesting to see him from being a 33rd ranked prospect in the organization to cracking the top 10 now. It's just, that's a phenomenal jump over the course of less than a year.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit that on the head. And, it's kind of cool, too, to see I guess a couple of things kind of stand out in what you just read. Number one is he's getting a ton of plate appearances this year. The minor league season, as most fans know, starts a little later than the big league season does, and it ends a month earlier. So for guys to get 400, he's probably going to end up with 475, 500 at bats by the end of the season. That's impressive to me. That really is impressive at that level. And that means that he's staying healthy, and it means that he's playing well enough to continue to get at bats. So that's really good. And Number two, he's not picking up those numbers at Colorado Springs, and we always want to see guys put up big numbers at Colorado Springs because that means that they're hitting well, but it also is being done in an environment that is considered to be very hitter-friendly. So, people tend to look at the numbers for guys at Colorado Springs with a little bit of a grain of salt, just saying, okay, it's an easier atmosphere to hit. But Biloxi's not got that reputation, so it's nice to see him putting up those numbers, in a place like Biloxi, which is a pretty normal, neutral hitting environment, especially compared to a place like, Colorado Springs or Denver would be at the big league level.
Yeah, I also like that he, is stealing bases at such a clip. I mean, it looks like, if he gets hot here in the last couple of weeks, he could actually have a 2020 year for them, which would be great. I'm also impressed that, he's not getting caught a lot. And that was kind of a little bit of a bugaboo on him last year. He was getting caught like a third of the time. So it was definitely tough. I mean, what's the point of all that speed? You really, in the majors, they always say you basically have to steal 80% of your bases in order just to kind of hit your break-even point as far as helping your offense. So it's great to see that he's, above that mark, so to speak.
Well, and just like minimizing strikeouts, I think that a lot of base stealing is a learned skill, and I think great base stealers in baseball history would tell you that it is. And, a lot of it's just figuring out timing of opposing pitchers, and a lot of it's knowing how big of a lead to get, and a lot of it's kind of knowing like the little fine aspects of the game that gets you that extra step, which is all that it takes to have a difference between being safe and being out, especially at the big league level. So it's nice to see it making those changes and adaptations. And had a chance a few weeks ago to go to Fan Fest in Washington, D.C. before the All-Star game, and I got a chance to hear Tim Raines, the Hall of Famer, who played for the Expos and the Yankees and White Sox and a few other clubs, and talked about base stealing. And he was pointing out just how mental base stealing really is. And so when you see a younger guy who's obviously got natural speed up his stolen base percentage, I think that's a big, big deal, because a ton of guys have natural speed, but a lot of guys also aren't smart enough to kind of harness that correctly and then use those mental aspects of the game to be able to up their stolen base percentage and to actually steal bases, because it is such a mental thing. And Raines talking about that really, really made me think of, other guys like Dave Krinzel. Back in the day, he was considered to be a top prospect for us. He never really harnessed that, though. And was able to translate just some great raw tools into being a good big league baseball player, not only just with hitting, but just base stealing and other things like that. We've seen that time and time again. So it's really exciting when you talk about a guy like Stokes who is making changes, and you're seeing those numbers accelerate in a good direction, unlike guys who, kind of get stuck at one level in the minor leagues and just sort of fizzle out, so to speak. So it's really exciting to see.
Yeah, I mean, for a 22-year-old to have that kind of patience at the plate is definitely a sign of maturity. I certainly hope that he continues to develop if his eye gets a little better. I mean, obviously the strikeouts are indicative of maybe him being just a little bit too patient, but I think as he hones in and maybe gets a little bit more of a feel at the strike zone, I think that that can only improve even more. So, yeah, keep it up. Troy Stokes, great work. What do you think? Do you want to do a little stepping up to the plate?
Yeah, great stuff, Scott. That was really good. I think we should go to the mailbag here for a question really quick.
Great.
Let's do that really quick. And thanks again to you and your interns for your work on the prospect profile here this week. We did get we got a number of emails, sort through here. And
while you sort through that, I'll stall a little bit.
This was supposed to be done by Sue in our pre-production meeting, but it did not happen. So let me find a good email here.
Yeah, that's Sue for you. I don't know. She's not going to last long. I can tell you that. Hope you're not
listening.
Well, maybe you should be listening, Sue, because maybe this will be a life lesson for you. And you won't be surprised then next time you come into a meeting and all your stuff is in a cardboard box. So
I got a good question here that we've got time, I think, for one, and then also do our stepping up to the plate. We'll get to more next week. But I've got a question here. From a Mr. Gary Brown of Brown Deer, Wisconsin, and he writes in, "Hey guys, love your podcast. Tell Craig to chill out about Miley. He's only okay, not the best, like he says. Also, do you think that the Brewers are going to make any acquisitions before the August 31st deadline? Will any guys get to the Brewers to pass through revocable waivers?" Scott, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I guess I could do that. First of all, it's very interesting that Gary Brown was telling Craig to chill out, because if there's even one person who's more animated than Craig, it might be Gary Brown. If this is the Gary Brown I know, it might be a different namesake, so it's possible.
Yeah, we do try to interact in person with as many of our fans as possible and local Milwaukee establishments. And we did have a chance to meet Gary before, and very, very passionate man. But in any event, yeah, Scott, do you think
loves our country?
Yeah, he loves our country too, which is great.
Did he sign it downtown Gary Brown or just Gary Brown?
He signed it downtown Gary Brown GP.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
he did. He did sign it. Also, Scott, thank you for your service from your naval days. But
wow.
Scott, what do you think of Gary's question? Do you think that the Brewers are gonna make any notable acquisitions? We mentioned on our podcast a week and a half ago now that the Brewers did pick up Jordan Lyles. He had passed through waivers, or I guess did not pass through waivers, but did pass to the Brewers, and the Brewers were able to acquire him from the Padres for virtually nothing. So will there be other acquisitions like Jordan Lyles, or is that kind of the last guy that we're going to have besides call-ups after rosters expand on September 1st?
Well, I think we are going to make some kind of acquisition. Notable, that's kind of debatable, I guess. I think what's going to happen is it's going to be some player that's probably overpaid and is at the end of their contract year. And so the team is basically just looking to do a little bit of a salary dump and save a little bit of cash. And whoever the player is, they're not valuable enough to actually trade much, if anything, for them. Very similar to Jordan Lyles, in fact. So I think that I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens. But if it does, I would hope that I still want us to address the catching situation, get a little bit more out of that. But otherwise, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was another bullpen arm.
Yeah, that's a good point, Scott. I think that we will see another acquisition, or maybe even two off the waiver wire. I don't know what kind of quality there's going to be. I could really see a guy like Gio Gonzales coming to the Brewers, and I say that just because the Nationals have been really playing under their talent level, it seems like, all year, and they didn't make any trades at the deadline except trading away Brandon Kinsler, but they didn't really sell their assets, and some could say that they're still going for it and still in contention. But that being said, they won a couple of games, and people thought, okay, they're making a comeback right after the deadline. But now they've gone back to their old ways. They've played pretty average-ish after that, and I don't really see them making a move this year yet, just because we're kind of running short on time here in the season. So I could see a guy who's got a heftier contract, like a Gonzalez type, being let go by the Nationals just for the salary relief for the last, 6 weeks of the year, 5 weeks of the year, whatever it is, by the time that the acquisition would actually happen. So maybe a guy like that, if it's not Gonzalez, somebody in that mold. I'm not necessarily saying that the Brewers should be all over that, but there's not much of a risk in doing that either if it's just money that's involved and not much money at this point in the year. So I can see that happening. And I say that because I think we could just use some depth, and I could see the other acquisition. I mentioned two possible ones. I think that the other one is going to come maybe in the bullpen just because of the injuries that we've had, and we've seen Soria now being placed on the DL last week, and we've got a ton of injuries, and Taylor Williams is currently just getting off the DL, and I just think we could use some depth. We got a lot of young guys out there. Taylor Williams is still young. Jacob Barnes is still young. A lot of these guys are still young. So it wouldn't be bad to add one more bullpen arm just to kind of give a guys just one more arm to have out there as an option, I think. And I do like your idea of upgrading a catcher. I really wanted us to agree with you about getting Wilson Ramos from the Rays a couple of weeks ago. It didn't happen. But I tend to think that the Brewers are going to add Christian Bethancourt to the to the 40-man roster and bring him up when the rosters expand. And Pena's been hitting better lately, so I don't think the Brewers necessarily see that as big of a need. Kratz has been an okay backup, and I could see Bethancourt, who's got the most home runs of anybody on the team in AAA right now, easily being added to the 40-man and brought up in September at least. And we do still have Jed Bandy in AAA as well if we wanted to go down that route. So we've got two guys in AAA who have that big league experience that could be added as well.
Still have Nottingham too, right?
No, we still have Nottingham. Nottingham's on the DL. So
that's right.
If he's back from his injury, we could in theory have 4 catchers up in September. That may not be a bad move.
I mean, you're looking at expanding the rosters. I don't have a problem with it, especially having a power bat off the bench. That'd be great.
And I think that the question becomes, how the Brewers kind of juggle their 40-man roster situation at that point, because we don't really know. Right now, I think that we're at 39, and I think Stearns is keeping a spot open. Maybe we'll see guys like Marcus Niplin or somebody put on the 60-day DL at that point to clear another roster spot. Maybe we'll see some other movement. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but I could definitely see the Brewers acquiring a couple more arms and thinking maybe that the catching situation will work itself out just because of the depth we do have at AAA with guys with big league experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's hope that's enough.
Well, thanks for the question, Gary. And fans, continue to send me your emails. Sorry we didn't have time for more than one here today. We'll get caught up one of these weeks, but please email us your questions at brewcrewreviewpodcast with an S at gmail.com, or our Twitter page is very active, and thanks to Scott and the social media interns on that. You can find our Twitter at brewcrewreview1 on Twitter.
Awesome. And as long as we're actually talking about Twitter very, very briefly, I did want to give a little bit of a shout out to Ober Sports. That's O-B as in boy, E-R. He actually has, not only does he have a Twitter, but he also puts out some really great videos on YouTube. I have liked his channel for quite some time. Brewer stuff and a little bit of Packer stuff kind of sprinkled in there too. It's always great whenever, you have a rough series or something, or even just to get through these cold winters, just to pop on a highlight video or a compilation video of great moments in Brewer history. So that's always a great thing. So yeah, keep up the great work. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks guys for the feedback and the stuff earlier this week. So much appreciated on that, and we love interacting with our fans on Twitter. So we've had a number of new followers here this past week. Always looking to get more, so we're growing and expanding on Twitter. This is our first season doing Twitter and social media, really. So it's always great to interact with fans, and it really gives us another tool to be able to do that. So again, Brew Crew Review 1 on Twitter. Please follow us. We do a lot of in-game threads, talk Brewers baseball. Even on off days, we'll put out some content. We'll air old interviews and anything new that we do, and all of our podcasts are available on Twitter as well. So continue to send in your questions on email or Twitter, and we'd love to hear from you. Scott, would you like to move on to our Rapid 9 segment?
Yeah, absolutely. This Rapid 9 is going to be pretty exciting. But since there's only two of us on this Rapid 9, I know that in the Rapid 9, we go around the horn. I'm not supposed to say that. That's, oh well. I'm pretty sure that we did the Rapid 9 first. I think we came before that. But basically, we just go around in a circle and talk about, answer a bunch of questions that we have. Some of them are submitted by our fans. Some of them are just something that someone will ask us at a random bar. So we compile these and put them together and then answer them as best that we can. And certainly the answers are usually up for debate, but there's only two of us, so we can take our time a little bit here. They don't have to be as always.
Yeah, you always get to take your time on Rapid 9. So, all right. Well, that's great. Well, let's get right started. So why don't you, I guess I'll go first because there's no one else. Unless Chad or Craig calling here really quick. But yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's start it up.
Play the intro music. Yep, there we go.
All right, perfect.
Yep.
Okay, so our first question in stepping up to the plate. Who needs to step up in that Milwaukee Brewers clubhouse here? Who needs to get it together a little bit?
Boy, I guess if you're talking from like a leadership perspective, I view Lorenzo Cain as being the leader on this team. I think he's really stepped up already, though, a number of times this year. So I'm not faulting him whatsoever. I think that he's a great team leader. You know what? I'm gonna say that our old friend Ryan Braun is starting to step up. I actually thought he looked great this series in Atlanta. I thought that he played amazing. I thought that his catch in Game 2 was the game changer, and I could see him kind of reverting back to the old Ryan Braun, at least on some level, as being a huge, huge boost to this team, whether that's off the bench or whether that's in an everyday role. Doesn't really matter. But I do think that Ryan Braun, given his veteran experience, given his playoff experience in Milwaukee, given the fact he's a former National League MVP, the longest tenured Brewer by a long shot, I think that Ryan Braun could actually be a huge stepping up to plate candidate, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, he's turned it on the last couple of weeks, but boy, about before that, this year has been really rough. I'm going to give – I got to say this. I'm going to give Jonathan Scope a pass. He hasn't quite been a Brewer long enough, but he is an honorable mention. It's about time, that we keep saying he's going to come around. Okay, well, it's probably about time to do that. Other than that, I'm actually going to say first base, which is kind of cheating, but that's both Eric Thames and Jesus Aguirre. Aguirre's turned on a little bit as of late, but both these guys are combined to hit a $156. In fact, in the last month, they've hit Thames and Aguirre have hit a $157 and a $156 respectively. So that is a rough month. And first base is your offensive position, and so that is definitely a big contributor as to why we were in a little bit of a swoon there. Question 2. Who do you think on the Brewers is maybe overachieving and potentially might come down to earth a little bit?
Oh, boy, I hate to think of it like that, but I think that we're unfortunately seeing the bullpen just generally coming down to earth a little bit. I still think that Jeffers and Hader are the real deal. I do think that we saw a little smoke and mirrors earlier this season with certain guys in the pen, maybe a Jacob Barnes, maybe a Taylor Williams. So I'll say the pen generally, and certainly Corey Knebel. It's a mold.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I hate to say it, but I mean, Jeffers' numbers have been so good that he's probably due for a slight market correction. So that's what I'm going to go with. But let's see here. Inning number 3. Which one divisional rival player would you love to see in a Brewery uniform?
Boy, that's a great question. I think that the guy who I've always loved in the division, I'm not going to say Scooter Gannett. Let's go with
it's a great answer, though.
Yeah, it is, because we could use him at second base. I mean, if we didn't have Aguirre, I would have always said Joey Votto, who I've always been a big fan of. But, yeah, I guess I'm going to have to go with Scooter Gannett. Wow.
It's not a bad answer. Hate to say it, but I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm a little bit envious of our neighbors to the south. If I have to pick just one, I'd really like Jose Quintana on this team. I think that would really help the bullpen quite a bit. The starting rotation quite a bit. And then honorable mention to Javier Baez, just because not only is he having a great year offensively, but his versatility on the infield is something that would be sorely needed. He'd be an upgrade in infield spots.
Yeah, and I thought of guys that played positions of more need for the Brewers, and second base certainly fits that bill.
Mm-hmm.
But Baez and Yadier Molina are probably my 2 least favorite players in baseball history, and they both play for teams that are our biggest rivals, so there's probably a reason for that. But yeah, pure talent level, those guys are just amazing. And Molina's old, but boy, he is still on top of his game in many ways. And Javier Baez is just a Brewer killer. So taking him out of those Cubs-Brewers matchups would be pretty awesome. Yeah, I was definitely thinking of Baez too, Scott. That's a great answer.
Well, hopefully this wasn't a little bit of foreshadowing, I guess. But my next question then is inning number 4. Who would you, despite them being good, or even if they're not good, I guess, who would you, within the division, would you never want to play for the Brewers no matter how good they are?
Okay, so that answer is probably going to be Yadier Molina. I just don't like the guy. Chris Carpenter back in the day would have fit that bill. There's certain guys that just not only are Brewer killers on the field, but just seem like guys that just do not mesh well with the sort of Milwaukee Brewer mentality. And I don't mean that just in a winning or losing sense. I mean it like the Mike Cameron jerseys untucked sense, guys that you could never imagine having fun on a baseball field. So guys like that are who I'm talking about. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Yadier Molina. It's probably just because he's filled us so many times over the years, but he's my pick.
Yeah, Yadier Molina was absolutely the guy that I wrote down. And I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, but we could use a catching upgrade. Nope, he's a prick. Can't stand him. Not interested.
I mean, yeah, I literally saw him. I don't know if you were at this game, but I was at a game in 2011 with some work colleagues at the time, and we drove down from the state capitol in Madison for the game, and it was a crazy game. It was the stretch. It was July actually, but it was 2011. The Brewers were clearly a great team that year. By that point, and we played this game where the Brewers ended up losing. I think it was 12-11 against the Cardinals, and it was one of those games where La Russa got ejected and complained after the game about everything, ranging from the Brewers like LED scoreboard lighting to Bill Schroeder's announcing, and then the umpires and Bernie Brewer stealing signs, and it was just like one thing after another. It was a crazy game, one of the craziest games I've ever seen. But Yadier Molina in that game, I remember him spitting on an umpire and getting tossed, and it was just, to me, one of the most classless, low-down things you could do to somebody else is to literally spit in their face. And I saw one of the best players in baseball do that to an umpire, and I just couldn't believe it. This coming from an organization that has quote-unquote class, and the hypocrisy was just galling. So at that point, he quickly became my least favorite player in baseball, and if the neck tattoos didn't do it, it was certainly that moment for me. So, yeah, I definitely Molina is top of my list.
Man, we both agree. Do you have an honorable mention? I have one that I thought of. So.
No, I don't know who this guy. Who is it?
Wilson Contreras.
Oh yeah, Wilson Contreras. That's right. That's right. Wilson Contreras. Well, they have a lot of common traits. Let's just put it that way. They're both. To me, at least, very contrary to sort of what the Brewers try to do, and it seems like they've got it's hard to get into the guy's clubhouse mentality. So the guys who play with them, I think that they're great teammates, but it just seems to me like they're very diametrically opposed to kind of what the Brewers have tried to build in Milwaukee and the sort of mentality around the team. So I would say, yeah, it's a good pick for either one of those guys, but yeah.
All right, let's move on to inning number 5. All right, this might be a little bit could get us a little emotional here, but what Brewers autograph did you never acquire but really wish you had gotten? Sort of your one that got away kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. Wow. So mine is really weird. So I've got a collection where I try to get every guy who's played for the Brewers. I've just kind of started this. I've got a lot of Brewers autographs from collecting for years, going back to when I was a kid, and this goes back to the 80s, literally. And I've got a lot of Brewers signatures, so I was very lucky that way. But I've started this thing where I'm trying to get an autographed baseball card, an autographed Brewers card of everybody. And some of those guys, that means I got to make a Brewers card or have a Brewers card made that you're going to have to get autographed. But certain guys have passed away, so you can't do it at all unless you use like a autograph on a 3x5 index card and put that in the case with it. You know, it's kind of weird. So
it's on eBay or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so I found a few of them on eBay. So I found just this past week, actually, I found Jose Campion, and there's a Ruben Quevedo, and there's older Brewers that have passed away like Davey May and George Scott. And so you can find some of those guys, but guys who played for the Brewers for just a little bit of time who didn't even have a Brewers card made would be on that list. So the guy that comes to mind very weirdly is Yadier Gonzales, who died very young. He was still an active player, I think, when he passed away. And he died in a freak of light, got struck by lightning on a lake in Florida in the off season, I think it was, and never had a Brewers card made. So there's literally nothing that was Brewers that he had outside of maybe a couple of 8x10s or something. So it's guys like that are the biggest ones, because you can either purchase or buy a Robin Yount. You can go to FanFest and get Robin Yount's autograph. You know, you can either get it for free or you can get it for $25 in person. You know it's real. He makes a ton of autograph shows over the course of the year. He's in Cooperstown every summer. He goes to the All-Star game on some years. Like, he's around, and he's in Milwaukee a lot too. So it's not guys like that. It's guys like Yadier Gonzales or the Mike Coolbaugh of the world, who died young, who died before they were even on a Brewers card. And those are the guys that are real tough.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it definitely was not probably the answer that I was expecting, because it was a player I had never heard of. But I guess
Scott, you dissected the Gonzales move in 2006 on the set. I just watched the whole DVD. So
Oh, whoops. Well,
we acquired him. We acquired him from the Mets for Mike Adams.
Yeah, I guess sometimes over time we kind of get that stuff somewhere in the way upper back shelf of our minds and never really dust it off and take it out. So that's probably good to know. I'm going to go with probably the opposite end of that spectrum, which is somebody that any Brewer fan would know the name of, and that would be CC Sabathia.
That's a great pick. That's a great pick.
I mean, so a couple things about it, I suppose, that I should bring up. One is that, most of us were still we of course were all of the cast of the Brew Review. Of course, we were all still great friends, hanging out all the time, and for that matter, still working and going to a lot of Brewer games together. So that was definitely a big part of it. Believe it or not, the wild card year, in a lot of ways, was more special to me than when we won the actual division, just because it was just kind of built up to this crescendo, and just to I guess Melvin pulls the trigger, says we're all in, and trades for Sabathia, and we think he's going to come over here and be pretty good. And he has like one of the best second halves of any baseball player ever. So, I mean, without him, we don't make the playoffs. In fact, if you interchange him with probably any other pitcher that year on any team, we probably don't make the playoffs. And so, get, I guess, his autograph would have definitely meant probably a lot to me. But it's not so much the autograph itself, but just to see him and say, hey, sign this. And then he signs it, and you're like, hey, thanks for everything you did, man. That was awesome. It's usually like the autograph is part of the autograph, but part of the moment. You got it.
Yeah, and the moment, too, I mean, as you pointed out, 2008 was incredible. They were both special, 2008 and 2011. But, in 2008, the Brewers had not made the playoffs at that point since 1982. So that covers pretty much my entire life up to that point. And, I mean, what a special moment for the franchise to finally make it after all those years of futility. Those of us who were Brewer fans in the 90s, as I know you were, and I know our co-hosts, Chad and Craig were as well, we suffered through so many awful teams where Matt Niesky started like 4 years in a row, and you just had this like Ricky Bonus all-star year. Like, it's just crazy what we had to suffer through as Brewer fans in the 90s. So to see CC come in and perform like that. And I was looking at his stats just a couple of days ago. I think CC is a future Hall of Famer. I mean, no doubt. And when you look at his numbers, what he's been able to do in Cleveland and Milwaukee and with the Yankees, it's just incredible. And I think that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame for sure. And one other quick note on that one too, Scott, is that we had the chance to meet CC and the whole team that night of the 2008 Brewers. Their night that they celebrated their playoffs, of going to the playoffs, and we were with CC for most of that night, and I don't think any of us wanted to ask him for an autograph while he was out celebrating, that win. But looking back on it, maybe we should have. That would have been good.
Yeah, I remember like he turned and like kind of bumped into me and like said sorry, but I actually flew so far and then I bounced off of him, and then I ran into Prince Fielder, and so by at that point I had bounced to pretty much the other side of the room, so I couldn't really.
Yeah, at one point Prince and CC were dancing next to each other, and I remember CC looked over at me like, who is this guy? But he was so happy because they had made the playoffs that he took my head. It was during a rap song, and he took my head and he started bouncing my head like a basketball, like on the dance floor. It was probably the highlight of my life. I'm going bald, so it was just like on my balding crown, and just that imprint of CC. I remember going into work the next day, and I still hadn't even like changed or showered. It was just reeked of champagne from that night at the bar with the Brewers, and it was one of the greatest fan nights of my life of being a Brewers fan. So that was awesome. But I will say this too, Scotty. I think that a guy like CC, when he's actually done playing, whether it's after this season, I don't think it'll be after this year, but after in a couple of seasons, that I think that there will be a time where CC Sabathia gets invited back to Milwaukee by pick your baseball card autograph dealer in Milwaukee area, and they'll do a big show with CC, and it's going to be like welcoming back royalty, because the Yankees never come to, Miller Park pretty much. And it may even be the first time back for CC, because I know that the last few times that the Brewers played the Yankees in interleague play, which is only once every 3 years, I think both times it was actually on the road. I don't know that CC's ever returned to Miller Park since 2008. I can't think of the time that he has. Maybe I'm missing one series that he was there, but in any event, very few and far between, if at all. So I could see him coming back to Milwaukee and getting essentially a hero's welcome for an RF show, or just doing something, or maybe at a 2008 Brewers reunion. Maybe they'll do a 15-year reunion when just about all the guys are retired, which would be 5 years from now. And I can definitely see that being a big deal, kind of like what happened when Prince came back this year.
Yeah, that would be definitely a great moment. I still remember the best part about that was that, like you said, we were like hair completely crusted with champagne and reeking of alcohol, and
Yep.
we wander up to, I forget if it was it the Velvet Room or Martini Mike's back then?
It was Martini Mike's.
Okay,
yep.
So I remember they just said, go down there and meet us, and I was thinking at the time that it was like it wasn't going to be a Brewer players. I thought it was just going to be like, front office.
The ticket office. And Yep.
And they said, make sure you bring your badge. And so we brought our badges, but we hadn't taken them out yet. And so we're walking up there, and we don't get within 40 feet of the door, and two bouncers instantly walk up, hands up, and they're like, private party, guys. Sorry, not tonight. And we just take out our IDs, and we're like, oh, we were supposed to. Before we even finished that question, they're like, oh, we're so sorry. Right this way, gentlemen. We're like, phenomenal. And then we walk in, and the first thing we see is Mike Cameron dancing, saying everything's free.
Yeah, and Mike Cameron, I remember at one point, Robin Yount and Dale Swain were doing shots, and then Mike Cameron at the end of the night just plucks down a credit card and pays for the entire thing after walking Mark Atanasio out the door. it was a great night. It was a lot of fun. Manny Parra was there, and I know Chad had an interaction with Manny and Bill Hall in the bathroom. It was a crazy night, just an awesome night. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. After we told them we were Brew Review and showed up in the Brew Review van, it was very special.
First and only time in my life that my phone broke. It was a flip phone. That's going to date this time. But, I flipped it open, and it just snapped right in half. And that was the only time I ever broke my phone.
Totally worth it.
Yep, absolutely. Did not care one bit. Got another free shot. Compliments to Mike Cameron.
That was a heck of a night. Yep, I agree. Well, all right. Good call on the season. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that we've been doing this rapid. That's very important. So moving on to inning number 6 here. Would you, if given the choice, totally up to you, would you bring back the ball and glove logo full time?
No, I wouldn't. And I know that's controversial. I think that the Brewers are I love how they incorporate old logos and current stuff at times, like how it's still part of the rotation. I would think, though, that so here's the thing. The Brewers' current logo, oddly enough, this year, 2018, marks the same amount of years that we use the ball and glove logo, which is crazy to me, but it's true, which we started to do in 2000. And the Brewers used the ball and glove from 78 through 93. And so it's the same amount of years. And next year is the 50th anniversary of the Brewers in Milwaukee. And I tend to think the team, now this is really going out on a limb, I think that the team next year is going to go with a completely new logo. And I could be wrong, but I could see them maybe incorporating parts of the old into a new type of design or new logo. But I have a feeling we're going to see something a little bit different next year, just because, again, the length of time that the current logo has been in use, and the fact that, it's the 50th year. So I tend to think something could be brewing with that in the offseason. We'll see.
Hopefully it's not. I know you say you don't mind that logo, but the one that had the M and the B and the baseball diamond and the two.
That was my favorite.
And my favorite. That logo was just a mess. I hate the blue and the green and the gold. I hate everything about that logo.
The Notre Dame logo. But no, the thing was with that is that those were sort of my formative years I was down at the stadium all the time. And so I've got a lot of weird, fond memories of that time. But I could see, I don't think that we're going to go back to any of the old logos. I'm saying that we're going to get a new logo, but maybe sort of still have like a game of the week where we do the ball and the glove still on our retro Fridays, and maybe they'll start to alternate in. We still do it. I think we do it every year, or we for sure have done in the past at least a time or two. One decade night each year where we do a 70s game uniform, and then an 80s with the ball and the glove, and then we do the 90s with the MB logo that you don't like, and then we could do the current one if we're giving it up after this year, but we'll see.
Yeah, I actually.
We got to.
Oh, sorry, I think I lost you there for a little bit, Vince. Hopefully you're back. But just to answer,
I think that the Brewers actually technically went for a new logo this year with anybody else. But it's like the M with the state of Wisconsin is the official logo now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, it's nice that it, brings everything together. So it's kind of a cool thing. I mean, at least then if you were anywhere in the U.S., you could see it. And if you were from Wisconsin, you would go, oh, it's awesome. Like we've got the state of Wisconsin there. And for 50% of the other people in the U.S. that saw it, they'd be like, oh, they must be from Michigan or something. I don't know.
It's over, yeah.
It's great.
I don't think that one's going to last terribly long because it was a backup logo for years and years. I don't know why they changed it this year officially, but they did. And but yeah, it's interesting. To answer your question, I could see us doing a new logo for next year.
I actually would like to see the ball and glove logo full time, just because I like how clever it is, and people still bring it up as one of the top 10 logos of anything of all time, just because of how clever it is with the MB and Milwaukee Brewers and all that fun stuff. But I do think as much as I enjoy the yellow and the powder blues, or even the 90s white with the blue pinstripes and all that kind of stuff. I think that those logos or those uniforms, unfortunately, make the logo a little bit campy. And so with that in mind, I would stick with the navy blue and white, black, maybe a little silver, that kind of thing going on for the uniform colors. But I would incorporate the ball and glove logo. I'd make that the main logo again.
Fair enough.
All right.
Fair enough.
Question number 7 then, okay, as long as we're talking about Brewer traditions and whatnot. If you could get rid of one of these things, which would it be? The sausage race, roll out the barrel, or Bernie's slide?
I would get rid of the sausage race out of those 3. There's been a weird part of me that looks at the sausage race as being I don't like it when it's the primary focus of people. That's the most excited that they get during the course of the game. So I don't know. I guess you could say that for any other traditions. I don't mind the sausage race either. It's obviously a cool Milwaukee thing. And the only reason I say that one out of the 3 is really because a lot of other teams now have copied it. I think the Brewers did it first, which is awesome. But the Nationals do the racing presidents and the Pirates do the racing pierogies, and it's lost a little bit of its uniqueness, I think, for that reason. And then we had the part this year where you get the sponsorship business side of things into the debate about the sausages, and I didn't necessarily like how that played out. So Roll the Barrel has been there since 1970. I like the fact it's been there forever for the Brewers, and Bernie Brewer was there, and it's very unique to Milwaukee since 1970 when Milt Mason literally climbed up the rafters at Military County Stadium to jump into a slide or to go down a slide, waiting for the Brewers to sell out a game finally. And so those are really kind of cool, unique Milwaukee things that play to the heritage of the team and of the city.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. If I have to pick one, I pick the sausage race. It is one of those things. I think it's the Effectively Wild podcast that says the formula is something like stupid plus time equals cherish. And I think that is usually most weird traditions that people don't understand. Having said that, the sausage race is probably the one I would get rid of, even though we were great participants in the actual sausage race.
We actually did that, yeah.
Unfortunately, I did finish that last, but I was the bratwurst. So if you bet on me, I apologize in advance.
And also we had kind of a fix at the beginning, so yeah.
Yeah, and I should point out that most of the people on the super team, they usually don't fix the races or anything like that. They just
No.
allow out. But I had a goal after that. I believe I had a beer or two before actually. I was pretty nervous, and my goal was basically not to trip and fall. However, one of the people in the visiting dugout actually, they had dropped their batter's donut outside of the on deck circle, and
that was Adam Dunn. I'll never forget that.
Well, I didn't see it, and I stepped right on it, and I almost rolled an ankle, but I stayed upright. I did finish last, but I didn't face plant, so there's that.
You're a team player, Scott.
He didn't hit me in the head with a bat, so I guess I should be happy.
Yep. No, it could be worse. Ask Randall Simon.
Yep, exactly. Inning number 8. Let's see here. Is that right? Wow, time really flies. All right, let me see here. Okay, what Brewer did you give up on that actually wound up having a pretty good career? Anybody throw out Brewer history, really?
What Brewer player would we give up on that had a great career? Well, that's a great question. I think the easy, quick answer is, you know what, I'm going to go with Chris Davis, actually. I don't know where he would necessarily play on this Brewers team, but I just think that a guy who's been leading the league in home runs the last couple of years in the American League has got some value, and we could have found a place for him to play. His defense is atrocious. You take a chance on a prospect at the time like Nottingham. I get why the trade was done, but I do think a guy like Davis in your lineup would be kind of fun to watch right now. And I'll definitely give a honorable mention to Nelson Cruz, who he threw in as just literally a throw-in to the Kevin Mench. I know Craig likes Kevin Mench a lot, but we threw him into that Kevin Mench trade along with mostly. So Nelson Cruz, obviously, he's had a long career, tons of pop. So I'll go with one of those big power hitting outfielders that don't play great defense, but who provided a lot of excitement for fans in their other cities over the years. So, yeah, Nelson Cruz and Chris Davis.
Those are both great answers, both probably better than the ones that I'm going to come up with. And I often wonder with that trade, I'm like, did Melvin think that Lance Nix was better than Nelson Cruz? Like, is that what
I just don't understand
there? Like, I would love to know, like, what side of the trade it was on that. Like, if we were like, well, no, we want to do this too. Like, was that our idea or their idea? I'd love to know. But
well, we really like Cordero in that, so we'll give you another outfielder. Like, we've already given you Carlos Lee, and granted he was a free agent after the year, but still, I don't think I don't know.
Yeah, that was rough. I actually was gonna say Scooter Jeanette. I know that we had interviewed him, and I, definitely thought he was a great guy, but I wasn't really sure. I mean, he's just like, he was kind of a tiny player. Like, he had like good bat speed, but other than that, there wasn't really anything that stood out. I don't think I would have ever anticipated him to be a 30 homer type. I guess, yeah, other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, National League All-Star. I mean, yeah, great pick.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise, I don't know. I always thought for a long time that I didn't want to give up on Jorge De La Rosa. And he's had a long career, not necessarily a good career, but he has stuck around. Just got released by the Diamondbacks last week, I think. Oh, sorry, I lost you there for a little bit, Vince. I'm just going to move on. I'm going to move on to question number 9 here. Last inning, last question. Would you prefer your Milwaukee Brewers, if you got to make the call, would you prefer us to be in the AL or the NL, and why?
Oh, boy. I'm an American League guy. I think I would prefer the AL Central. It's probably just biasness from growing up in that. I know that old-time Milwaukee Braves fans were really excited and pushing for the Brewers to play in the NL all those years that we played in the American League, but I'm the other way. I grew up with the American League teams and love the American League. I think it would be really fun to be in the American League Central right now.
I have always been like, I'm going to sound a little bit like a flip-flopper here, but I've always said that I prefer the NL because I love the strategy at the end of the lineup and all that kind of stuff with, bunting, hit and run, safety squeeze, all that great stuff. And I am to the point now where, like, even in the NL, it just doesn't happen enough. And so if that's the case, then forget it. Like, just don't even let the pitchers hit. I would rather just go to a DH in both leagues. And then I guess I'm going to expand on that a little bit and say this. Can't stand Cubs, can't stand Cubs fans, can't stand Cardinals. Cardinals fans, they're hit or miss. Twins fans, awesome. White Sox fans, they don't go anywhere. There are none. Cleveland, definitely like their fans too. So with all that in mind, I'd like to be back in the AL Central if I can help it.
Very good, and I know that our anonymous source, Tom Carter, who works for the Brewers, he mentioned that Cubs fans are the most annoying demographic of other teams' fans to deal with at Miller Park. So that would definitely play into what you're saying as well, Scott. So that came right from our anonymous source.
He said they also smelled the worst.
Yeah, that came right from Tom Carter, our anonymous source. So that's good to know. Well, this has been a great episode, Scott. Thanks for all your work, to your intern staff here for the podcast. Thanks to our co-hosts Craig and Chad for all the work that they've done on this one, and thanks to our anonymous source Tom Carter, and to all of our interns. We really appreciate it. Most of all, thanks to our fans. Please continue to write us on Twitter and on Gmail. Again, it's Brew Crew Review Podcast with an S at gmail.com. And on Twitter, it's Brew Crew Review with a 1 at the end. You will find us very active on Twitter, and we love to get new followers and interact with our fans. So thanks again for all your support this past week. Continue to like us on Twitter, retweet a tweet about a Rookie Week baseball earlier this week that was posted by us, and you will have a chance to win that autographed Rookie Weeks baseball if you like our Twitter page and retweet that tweet.
Oh, that's right. By the way, yeah, time's running out on that. You guys only have like a day left to do that, so you got to hurry.
Yep, so hurry it up. But thanks again, everybody.
All right, thanks again, and stay classy,
Milwaukee. Go Brewers. Dun, dun, dun. Thanks, Scotty.
Build me up, Buttercup. Play us out.
That's it. Go Brewers.
All right, go Brewers.